Hi, Beth. Thank you so much
Hello.
for joining me in this conversation. And thank you for accepting to share your journey as a supervisor.
Pleasure. Nice to talk to you again.
Beth, could you share a little bit about yourself in terms of your background as a coach?
Yeah, sure. So originally I was an HR professional. And I guess during my time as an HR person, realized that what I really liked was working with leaders and having that kind of close relationship with them and sometimes with their teams. And so after 20 years of doing that in the corporate world, I started a master's in executive coaching. And that kind of solidified really the idea that it was that bit of HR which I really loved. So the sort of close relationships, supportive relationships with leaders, although not exclusively leaders. And so I started my own kind of practice as an executive coach. So I think it was a combination of knowing that there was an activity that I really liked, then studying coaching and thinking, oh yeah, I really think this is it. And also seeing some people around me, including my husband actually, who'd made a move into executive coaching from HR, and kind of looking at what he was doing and thinking, I think I'm really going to enjoy that. And so I'm 3 years into my independent practice and love it.
Thank you for sharing, and your passion really comes across. And what drives you as a coach, and how does that impact your supervision work that you're doing?
Hmm. I mean, I think for me in coaching, what kind of motivates me is to help people find their own way, um, get conscious of their choices, I suppose, and provide for them a kind of a reflective space. Because I've seen the power of that even way back in my corporate career, and I now really see it in my own coaching. Um, and so I'm really keen to help them connect to what it is they want, who they are, and therefore what choices are available to them. And sometimes there's something around building confidence in that too. So, it's one thing having the insight and knowing what the choices are. It's another thing moving to action. And I really love that process of a coach of being part of someone gaining the confidence to make steps to go in a direction that they've chosen. So that was what motivates you as a coach. That was the first bit of your question, wasn't it? And then why supervision from there?
Yes. What influences your supervision work in terms of your coaching background, and how does that influence
Yeah.
supervision?
Well, I mean, in a really basic way, it's also a reflective space. So, I love being in partnership with my supervisees, as I do my clients, to create a space for a pause and for reflection. So that's very similar between the two. Obviously, the people you're with are slightly different. Their profession is different usually. But I think it also, the style that I would have as a coach is also, I can see it in my supervision work that I do. So it's quite facilitative. Um, uh, it's quite, I think, validating. I would say are some characteristics that are common of my coaching, and I think they read across well into supervision. Of course, in supervision, there are other roles that you play with respect to your supervisees that are really important, like the normative one. Um, but I think the underlying style is kind of the same. But in supervision, there's also the reflective space. There's also the what choices do I have as a coach? There's also a piece around developing my own voice as a coach, which I think all come into the sort of supervision work that we do. And and they're very meaningful to me in both settings.
Mhm, mhm.
Did that answer your question, Andrea? I don't know if I waffled a bit there.
No, definitely. Definitely. And there's no right or wrong in just right. Everybody's journey is different and the influences are different. In terms of supervision, how did supervision come into your story as a coach, training as a supervisor?
I mean, I think the main reason is because, after having been a sort of practicing coach for a while and having my own supervision, both individual and group and peer supervision, I was just really, really aware of the value that I get from it and how critical it is to me. And it's really simple. It's just about wanting to be that for someone else. Because when you know the value of it for yourself, you think, well, what, it feels like a natural progression to want to sort of offer that to others. And I've thought about it for a really long time. So I didn't want to jump into a course just because there was a course out there. And I wanted to feel like, I suppose that my coaching practice was somewhat consolidated before I moved to the supervision step. So it took me about a year to sort of think, this is something I want to do. Is this the right time? Is it not the right time? Is it this course? Is it this course? I kind of went through a process of thinking about what was important to me about the course I chose as well. But really, it just feels like a really natural extension to me of why you're a coach in the first place, because you want to help and support others to grow. Realize the value of supervision for yourself and how important it is to us, as a community of coaches. And so, why don't I get involved in that then? Maybe I can play a part, And I guess somewhere in my background, I've done quite a bit of teaching. And I wonder whether I thought this was not that supervision is teaching, it's not. But maybe some elements of what I might have enjoyed about teaching, I thought I might also be able to offer in a supervision context. Yeah. So I think that's it. So it wasn't like the sudden sort of epiphany. It sort of grew as I got more established in my coaching practice and as I felt the value of supervision for myself.
You mentioned readiness, and really, there was a time in which you decided, am I ready, aren't I? Which course do I enroll into? And this is something that some of our students, before they enroll, go through this period of understanding readiness. And I'm really curious, now that you qualified as a coach supervisor, how do you, when you look back, how do you see that journey? And maybe if you can share something that would be like your experience now that you look back. How was the process like?
Yeah, because it's not a checklist, is it? I'm ready when I've done XYZ, ABC. I think my main feeling about that is that in my mental model, when I'm supervising, I'm in a peer relationship. So I'm with a fellow coach and I happen to be taking the supervisory role. So
is it rather than an authority?
Right.
So we're equals rather than here you're
right
at a different level than and because I'm a supervisor.
Yeah. And so even if I'm supervising someone who, let's say, has many, many, many more years of independent coaching than I do, I still feel I can be a credible supervisor because of what you just said. So that's with the benefit of hindsight, perhaps, easier to say. I did ask myself the question, is it too early? But I felt that personally, for a start, my coaching journey didn't start when I set up as an independent coach. It started in the years before that. And even with my independent practice, I felt, I've this is what I do for a living. So I've done a lot of it, enough to be able to say, oh, well, here's another way of considering that, or here's another technique that you might try, or in my experience, this has happened. I suppose that would be more difficult if, you hadn't ever practiced as a coach, for sure. But I think the credibility piece for me is more to do with me seeing the supervision relationship as an equal one. It just happens to be that I'm taking a role with respect to that dialogue, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes. And how did the training contribute to this readiness once you've enrolled and started the training and you feeling confident in your skills as a supervisor?
Yeah. Well, it's a really good training, in the sense that I found the faculty's not only level of expertise, you sort of hope that would be, what it needs to be, but it was an extremely well structured course. And the sort of concepts were really delivered in like a timely way, and a really well thought through way. And the faculty was super encouraging. So, the encouragement is to do some practice supervision, make mistakes. It doesn't matter. So the whole atmosphere I found quite encouraging and validating, I would say. So that helps build your confidence. Also, you see that in your group of fellow students, there's a whole range of people with a range of different backgrounds. So the sort of comparative element that you might have when you think, oh, there's someone got more or less than me, I think is reduced, because it's actually quite a diverse group of people bringing really different angles to supervision. And, you're all just there to get a common kind of set of understanding and awareness of what this activity is. But I think the other thing I would say, is that, and it certainly took me a while, and maybe still takes me, I still have to think about it, is what kind of the difference between coaching and supervision. So I think what the course helped with is the sort of mentalization of the activity of supervision as something slightly different than coaching. And I don't think I would have got the understanding that has perhaps emerged for me just by reading books, for example, or listening to podcasts. I needed that sort of engagement with other people, both the other students and the faculty, to sort of work through that, and what it meant for me and how I could represent it to myself.
Were there
Really long answer to your question, by the way.
These are amazing, these, because there's always nuggets, in what you
Yeah.
shared that we can take away, and different things will resonate with different people.
Yeah.
Were there any challenging moments throughout the training where you thought, or unexpected moments, even if not challenging? I'll let you choose between challenging and unexpected, or both.
I can't think of anything unexpected. I mean, for sure, doing a fishbowl of supervision when you just started understanding what it is to be a supervisor, for yourself, is challenging. And it was the same when I started coaching, and the first time you do coaching in front of a group, or so that is a little bit challenging nerves wise, even in a supportive group, which mine really was. I think the biggest challenge I had was uh, and not so much about the content of the course or the way the course kind of went. It was more around my relationship towards the sort of normative element of supervision. So I think I mentioned before that I think I brought with me from my coaching quite an ease with the restorative piece and the formative piece, but I wasn't quite sure about the normative one. And I needed time and the process to work through what was my take on that and what would that look like for me. I think I had it in my head that, oh, this is about sort of being punitive or authoritarian or, overly telling people. And I was a bit resistant to that. So one of the challenges for me was finding a way to um, do that activity, that normative activity, if required, but in a style that was natural to me. And even right up to the point that I submitted my assignments and got the feedback um, on the video from Bea, um, that element for there was still one I'm kind of working on. I've still got it with me today. It's like, yeah. Don't shy away from that normative piece. It's a really important part of it, but find my way to do that. And so to get there, I needed lots of conversations about that, with the ICCS group, with other coaches that I know, or supervisors, with my partner. I just needed to talk about it a lot to sort of come out the other end and have my okay, yeah, okay, I got it. Now I do that in my way, um, rather than saying, "Oh, I don't like that, so I'll lean away from it."
Mm.
So yeah, I would say that was one of the challenges for me, content-wise. Um, yeah,
And it's not an uncommon one. It's
yeah,
quite common for coaches to
yeah,
find it challenging to step into that normative
yeah.
piece. And Beth, what do you love about supervision?
Um, I just love the fact that you get a chance to be part of someone else finding their voice and their confidence in coaching. Um, I just think that's such a privileged thing to be a part of. Um, and of course, when you're working with other coaches, most of the time you're with people who are like hugely invested in their own growth and development. So it's just a joy to be in an interaction with people who are so there to grow and develop and learn together. And so that's just such a wonderful way to spend time.
Mm.
um, and it's not so long ago that I started up my own practice. Um, had lots of the questions that I hear now from my supervisees about: is this right? Is this wrong? Is this coaching? Um, how do I talk about charging with my clients? Have I got this boundary right when I'm in a three-way with the, I can remember that beginning point. And so particularly when I'm supervising, I guess, coaches earlier on in their journey, I feel an affinity for them, because it's not so long ago that I was in their situation or something like it. But really, it's just the joy of being part of someone else's development, and those people are really meaning to be there. They've really chosen to be there. They're really showing up for it. So, yeah, I think that's what I'd say.
I really resonate as a supervisor, and the work and the commitment of coaches, and um, in the sessions, there's a very special place, the supervision session, and also the impact is so far, reaches so far, because
Mm,
if a coach develops with you, their clients will be impacted, and
yeah,
the system, the whole system that they are part of, their clients
yeah.
are part of, it reaches so far, the work that we're doing.
Mm.
And you mentioned clients. What type of clients do you work with?
In supervision.
In supervision, yes.
So it's early days for me because I just finished the course in March, I think, February. Um, sort of two groupings. On the one-to-one supervision, um, it's a developing sort of practice for me. Um, I have one really established coach, independent coach, and I have one internal coach. And then on the group side, I have a group of HR people. So we're kind of doing restorative flavor of group supervision with them. And I'm about to run some group supervisions within a big corporate for internal and external coaches. So it would be the first time that they're putting actual supervision in place. So that's going to be a group activity. So that's my kind of starting client base. And I hope that develops in both directions. Actually, I'd like to continue it along the one-to-one path, but also on the group path. And one of the things I'm really interested in is how can the kind of supervision type methods and approaches be put to sort of be used to help support HR professionals. So it's something that I'm interested in kind of exploring further. I think they benefit hugely from the sort of reflective space. So yeah, that's the two kind of prongs, I guess, that I'm hoping to develop further.
What kind of challenges do these clients usually bring?
So I think there's a lot of, is this right? Did I do the right thing? Could I have done that differently? Would I do that differently again? Type questions. There's a lot of just general boundary reflections on boundaries. Whether that be coach, client, organization, coach organization, in its very different guises. I think boundary considerations come up a lot. And I think for more coaches who are earlier on their career, just confidence, not necessarily, just, let's talk through something that I did. Let's talk through how it worked out with that particular client. And I felt a bit strange, so let's talk through. And something about use of self. So that comes up quite a lot. I mean, it could be that I'm introducing it in response to, me feeling that maybe there's something to explore there with a coach. But I find that often when there's a stuckness about something, use of self can be quite helpful. So yeah, I think there's some of the kind of more common themes. Endings would be another one. How to end, when to end. That's been I've had quite a couple of supervisees who've been talking about that recently. The sort of also even the ethics of that. So, when someone wants to continue, a client wants to continue, is it right to continue, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess that comes also back to something around boundaries. But yeah, they're the ones that spring to mind.
It's yes, these conversations can be quite complex, but also restorative, and there's lots that you share there. There's many aspects of the supervision space that are explored. How has, on a slightly different note, how has becoming a supervisor shaped you as a person, as a coach?
I mean, for me, being back in a sort of learning environment, talking again about coaching and then with the supervision lens, I think just was a kind of like a nice refresher of certain concepts that I, myself studied as a coach but may have just lost contact with. So thinking about things like parallel process and transference and countertransference, which weren't new concepts to me, but they kind of talking about them in the context of supervision brought them back into my awareness. And more generally, I would say put me reminded me of how important it is to be reflecting as we go. So something about being back in that reflective space myself has has now, I think, influenced being more reflective as a coach. Um, so I think it's actually also deepened my coaching, because even things like the seven-eyed model, which obviously is kind of quite central, um, at least to the way that ICCS teach the course, is also really helpful for coaching. So yeah, that was nice to think, oh yeah, how might I think about the system also in the coaching, arena? And also, just as a human being, it's just really reinvigorated me, because I love being in a learning environment, but I also really love supervision. So I'm just super excited that I've got this kind of new skill set that I can now offer. Um, and it is part of the mix, and it's a really nice organic part of the mix. It makes sense. It's not trying to do something wildly sort of incongruous. And I just really, really, really enjoy it. I loved all the kind of practice supervision that I did throughout the course. I got a huge amount out of it myself. So I'm just delighted that I've done it and that it's now part of what I am doing and what I'm able to offer. So a bit of reminder of things that are important and can be useful, but also there's an energetic thing about, I really love this. This is very cool. I now get to do
Obvious
this
when
too.
you talk about it, but it's really good. Lighten up
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
as you talk about it. And I have one last question for you, and it's if you think about effective supervision,
Mm.
what key qualities or values do you think that do you believe are essential for effective supervision?
Mm. Gosh, for me,
Question, I know.
it's a huge question. I'll just say some stuff. So for me, the relationship is everything. So the sort of safe, non-judgmental, um, as equal as it can be, relationship, which is kind of then, the container. Curiosity, which I think, prevents you from assuming as a fellow coach, oh yeah, I know what they're talking about because I've had situations like this as a coach. So keeping curious, um, and holding your own assumptions lightly. Use of self, hugely important in supervision, to be alert to what may be showing up in the relationship between you and the supervisee, which may be to do with that or may have come in from outside. I really value humility in the supervisory relationship. Um, and as we sort of said at the beginning, sort of having clear in your own mind that you're there in a slightly different role to the one that you would play as a coach, and that you keep in mind the client of your supervisee, in the broadest terms, could be client as organization, and that is kind of on the horizon of all the work that you're doing. And that's sometimes a bit challenging for me, to remind myself of that. But I think many of the qualities I think that make a good supervisor are those that make a good coach. There's huge overlap, but it's a different activity. And as a supervisor, I think you're invited to be more giving of yourself, your own experience, your own ideas, than you might be in your average coaching session. That's what comes to mind.
Thank you so much for sharing, Beth. It was such a pleasure to have you here in this conversation, and I'm sure it's going to inspire and add a lot of value to coaches who are considering to train as supervisors. Thank you.
Hope so. Yeah, thanks for the time. I'm smiling now because we're talking about supervision, so it's good.
It's great.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.